So Advocacy Day, 1 week from today, we're going to have some speakers in the morning. We're going to have some time in the middle of the day for a break and as well as to prepare for our meetings. So what I mean by that is if you have a meeting, like let's say you're in the LA area or the San Francisco Bay Area, and there's other organizations and other people going to your meeting later that afternoon, we're giving you some time to get together and just figure out who does what and how the role should be, and make sure you got your P's and Q's and I's and T's dotted and crossed and all that kind of stuff. And then from 1 to 4 we will have meetings with legislators. This year we're doing it a little differently. Last year we did it that we set up a meeting for everybody who wanted meetings, and we're going to Advocacy Day, and that was just really hard because people weren't signing up till last minute, so it was really hard to make the meeting. So this year we we targeted people instead, and it's probably going to be more effective anyway. If you do want to, we will be sending out an email either later today or tomorrow, probably tomorrow, with the list of people who we are trying to get meetings with that Cameo is setting up. If you want to set up a meeting with your own legislator, that is completely fine, but we're going to ask that you go ahead and make that request to their office. And just let us know so we can make sure we schedule all those things properly. So, and Roger is the one. Roger, if you want to pop your
I'm sorry, I was on mute, didn't know it. Can you hear me?
okay. She's fairly new with Cameo, so you might not have met her yet. She is going to be, my internet is unable, so I am going to turn off my video. She has joined us. She joined us, oh gosh, I think a month ago. I don't even know now.
April 15th?
Maybe
It
2
seems
months
like
ago, maybe 6 weeks. 6 weeks.
in a good way.
April 15th, 6 weeks ago. Help us with special projects and doing some policy stuff. So she's helping us in herding cats and scheduling lots of meetings. We have about 26 requests out for meetings. So that's really great. So Roger, if you want to say hi.
Hi, I'm Roger.
There's Roger. Great. So are there any questions about sort of the either, and if you could pop your email, Roger, into chat so they know who to tell if they set up a meeting with their legislator. We'll make sure that list goes out by tomorrow morning, so you have plenty of time. People are really busy this week anyways because it's big floor meetings are going on. You'll see not all the bills that we don't know the fate of all the bills that we're advocating for yet. So are there any questions on the day? I forgot to mention at 4 o'clock we'll wrap up and see how things went, and probably kick back with the beverage of your choice. We'll suggest a cocktail, but just kind of chill out and hope, see how things went. So any questions for the day? All right, great. Well, moving on, I just wanted to tell you a couple of things that are coming up at Cameo before we go any too much further. On June 21st, we're having our friends from Cal OES back on the California reopening. Everybody knows we're open for business June 15th. June 15th is a big banner day for California because that, as we will learn in a few minutes, is when the budget needs to be passed as well. And we're having a Q&A. It's a time where if your businesses, your clients that you're working with have big questions, that's the time, that's the place to bring them. We'll hopefully get them answered. We're having some people from, they mentioned Cal OES, the same people that we had last time, to help our clients. And then, as always, there's a resource page coming up. So besides the webinar, besides the Advocacy Day, which is our big effort here, we have the webinar on June 21st. We did some introductions. I also want to call out, there's a couple more of my team members on the call. One is Lisa Rivera. Some of you may or may not have met Lisa. She has been around a little bit longer, I think April 1st. And she is also supporting the programming efforts. And you're probably hearing a lot from her and getting some emails from her. She's working on the member outreach part of Advocacy Day. And I think I saw Melissa on there. Melissa Cruz is here from the Cameo team, as are a couple of our board members. Oh, and Emily Gasner. Emily is our VP of Strategic Initiatives, and Jesse Torres, chair of our board, and Mark Herbert, also on our, and Nancy Swift, also on our board. So thanks everybody for joining us, and thanks to everybody else who's on the call. There's a couple of you I don't know, so if you want to go ahead and pop your name and org into chat, that would be fantastic. After introductions, we'll talk a little bit about the California legislative landscape, talk about a suggested agenda for meetings, and go through the talking points. We are recording, and you are free to share the recording as well as these slides and the handouts with your other staff members. We will have a special handout for the legislators. They don't need the directions on how to hold a meeting and stuff like that. So, oh, Julian. Hey, Julian. Julian's also sits on Cameo's board. I don't have my gallery view, so I missed one or two. So nice to see all of you on the call. Thanks, Michael and Sarah and Charlene. Nice to meet you. I don't think I know you. So
you as well. Glad to be here.
Yeah, great. So I'm going to move on just for time. And there we go. California's legislative session in 2021. It is a completely different picture than it looked like it was last year at this time. Last year at this time, I pulled these talking points right from my last year's PowerPoint. Uncertainty was the name of the game. Nobody knew what was going on. Nobody knew Nobody knew how much revenue would be lost, or what the California fiscal situation was going to be. We moved our Advocacy Day because COVID. It was all about the budget, and we were looking at July 27, and when people were going back to hear bills. So things were all kind of nutty back then. 2021 is a completely different scenario. In 2020, we thought we were going to have at the first glance, we thought we were going to have a $54 billion budget deficit, $54 billion deficit. It couldn't look any different than it did last year than it is today. We're going to have a $75 billion surplus with $25 billion coming from the CARES Act from the federal government. So it is a lot about the budget, and a lot of our advocacy pieces are about the budget. And I have never been last year was all, what can you cut? This year it's all, what can I get? So it's really kind of an exciting place to be, I think, for the state, for overall, for many things, for all the things that we care about, not just small businesses, but education and other things, and healthcare, and all the things that, will make our state prosper in the future. Um, Housing, there's so many things, infrastructure. Um, it's really we're really in a good place to be, so happy to be, you know having these, I don't want to call them fights, but the negotiations over the budget, and and that we're actually coming from a place of bounty rather than scarcity. The other thing is, everything is happening as everybody figured out how to do it remotely, and whereas, not that it wasn't working before, it worked, but it's figured out. Things are happening, votes are happening. Well, also now I think people are getting vaccinated, and so things are going to somewhat return to normal. Um, but, you know, the budget is going to be passed on time. Last year, they kind of passed it on June 15th. They had to wait until they figured out what all the tax revenues were going to be, because you didn't have to. There was a delay in paying your taxes, so it's a completely different atmosphere, which is good, for advocates. So, but people still want their things passed, right? So, next, I'm going to go over. Are there any questions? Does anybody have any questions on that? Because I'm going to kind of switch topics and talk about our agenda, the kind of this suggested agenda for the meetings. And you will get these slides, so don't worry about it. This slide is pretty much the introductory slide, the suggested agenda. The suggested agenda is intro, the why, the ask, and a close. Okay, so this is the intro. First, you're gonna do nice. Don't forget to be gracious. Thank legislators for their time. Make sure that everybody gets introduced in the meeting. They should be brief. You don't have to go through a whole, the whole, like, long introduction, but sense of who you are, who's in the room, and who else is in the room on the phone with them. It might be either a legislator or it might be a staff person. Thank the legislator or the staff person if they've done something positive for small business, especially women-owned and entrepreneurs of color. And then thank them for supporting. Mostly everybody's done something really good for us. I mean, the state's been really, really generous to small business, more generous than I've experienced in times past. So, there might be other people who you're meeting with. There's a couple senators who have introduced bills specifically for either our industry, either the infrastructure, or for small businesses. So you can call that out for them. And we also want to thank them for the strong investment they've made in this year's budget. So that's this past the 2020 to the 2021 fiscal year. So, any questions on introduction? Are seeing none, no hands raised. All right. So you do the introductions, and then you talk about the why. And the why is probably super important. This is where you share your stories, you pull at the heartstrings, you try and connect somehow to the legislator. You know, COVID highlights, small business. We all know, um, you know, uh, the devastation it's brought among small business. If you need I will send you one or two reports, links to one or two reports, and then let me write that down. On the effects, they're coming out all the time. You know, small business has been one of the groups that have been hurt the most by COVID as far as interest groups. And we know that that business owners of color have suffered even worse than their white counterparts. So, you know, I think I don't want to call this the silver lining, but the sort of the silver lining is finally I think that people understand the role that small businesses play in their community. They understand that small businesses are the backbone of their communities, and not just they're not just giving lip service to it. And it's kind of taken, I think, a lot. You know, we've said that for years and years and years, but I think it's taken this pandemic to bring the importance of small business to the small micro business in our and to the forefront of our policy. So, um, you know, I think the challenges you can set the challenges and the need to support the ecosystem. The challenges are that one thing that I just mentioned, that business owners of color are not they're not being served by a lot of the programs that have the federal programs, and we'll see how they fare in the grant programs when that data is released. Hopefully we'll do a little bit better here in the state. We do know the rebuilding fund, we do have a little bit of data on that they are supporting, I think over 65, about 2/3 business owners of color. So that's a bright spot. So we know that's one of the problems, but you know, we know that language appropriate materials have been a problem. We know programs rolling out really quickly. There's a trade-off between efficiency and getting things out quickly, and equity. That's been a little bit of a problem. And you know, there's other things we know. Another challenge is what to do about commercial rents. I know a lot of people are concerned about that. People need legal assistance to maybe renegotiate the rent. There's lots of challenges, right? There's also a challenge for we've seen with our populations, digital literacy is an issue. Just people knowing what a URL is and not just something to click on. So um, uh, people figuring out how to scan documents, things like that, stuff that's needed. So the challenges are many, and you don't have to list the ones that I listed, but you should list from your experience what you see is happening in your community and with your clients. You know, and then supporting the ecosystem, that's what you all do. And I think the other thing that you all have stepped up tremendously to help support the small businesses, and then you also need help, right? You know, the and that call has been answered. You know, a lot of you have hired staff, a lot of you for the grant program. You know, there was money there so that you could hire additional staff to do outreach and help people apply for the grant program. So, you know, the ecosystem, the coaching that everybody's done and helping people pivot their businesses, the money that in forms of capital, in forms of all sorts of different all sorts of different products. From 0% loans to grants to low cost loans, um, all sorts of capital needs, and then the connections to markets. You'd help people pivot to go online and get customers online when they couldn't get customers in the door. So you know, the ecosystem, super important. And I think the value of it was seen. I haven't, I think I'm going to call on Nancy. I think you guys did something, some kind of impact data where you found out that for every dollar that was invested in you, you were able to create either 192. Was that right?
It's close, and I don't know the exact figure. So maybe while you keep talking, I'll find it. But
Okay, because it's in my talk. I like to use that in my talking point. It's an amazing statistic.
yeah,
The
I'm
impact.
sure you pulled it from our request last year or earlier this year. But it's so important to consider what the investment means and the ripple effect. So it's really good to keep it alive in front of people.
Yeah, all this money isn't just money that the state is spending. This money, this dollar investment in the ecosystem, in you all, is returning money back in spades to the state. So that is super, super powerful. And of course, if you have clients and client stories in your district that you want to share, your favorite story on the issue they had, the problem that you were able to solve for them and how you solved it and what that impact was, those things are always really, really great to share. So. Oops, you know what? I will have to update this slide for some reason. I did not update the slide. The ask. We are not necessarily, yes, we do want to stop predatory lending and invest in communities of color. But our big asks this year are on a handout that I am going to share with you. I'm going to stop sharing my screen. But actually, I'm going to share my screen one more time. I just want to finish the agenda. And then the ask is going to be all the talking points that I'm going to share in a moment. And I will update this slide before we send it to you. So we'll come back to what the ask is. The one thing I am going to give you a list, kind of a long list of stuff. All right, that this is great, right? We have a long list of stuff that we want to advocate for. This is really exciting. We usually have 2 or 3 things and then some other things that, yes, we support, but that not quite there yet. So you may not know all the nitty gritties and you're not supposed to. It's okay. Rather you say, hey, I don't know, but I'm going to refer you back to me. I might refer them to somebody else. Or if you know the person that's working directly on the bill, you can completely admit if you're say, hey, I'm not the expert at that. I know that this is going to help small businesses and let Heidi tell you more. And I will have a follow-up conversation with that person and case closed. That'll be fine. So it's okay. You don't have to go into the weeds on these meetings. You could pass the buck and just say, I know it's going to help small businesses and we'll get you the answer that you need. So far we had the intro, the why, the ask, and then the close. So what we'd like to do in the close is, ask if there's anything they're working on, confirm any follow-ups. Okay, I'll connect you with Heidi. If you want, a great thing to do is summer sessions coming up. They're going to be in town. You can invite them for a business tour, to visit one of your business or have a town hall call with your clients. Make sure you thank them again. If you can, get a screenshot and send it to me. We'll post them. And then we are going to ask you to post a thank you on social media. We will have suggested tweets that will go in a handout too, as well, along with this. And so we only have the draft handout because I'm waiting for a couple pieces of information. So, but we'll have draft social media posts you can do, and you can thank them and tag them. So that's what you do at the end. And it's very important to close, confirm. Sometimes they'll set you up with a district person. So say, okay, you're going to connect me with the district person, and you can call, nudge a little if they don't do that after the call, after you thank them and send them the picture, and et cetera, et cetera. Great. Is there any questions about the meeting? I'm going to try and put my video on again. Any questions so far? I have a lot of old hats on this call, so some of that might have been review for you. All right. Well, let's see. I am going to share.
Heidi, may I interrupt you while you're
Yes.
multitasking?
Yes.
I confirmed your $1, and it's actually of the tape, the state funding, the expansion program funding returns $192 into the community and to the clients.
I mean, what an investment, right? Policymakers should be jumping up and down at this. This is fantastic. And the good news is we're going to advocate for a little more money for something related. So,
and just a little editorial about numbers like that. Oftentimes they're overestimated, and I would say my research team underestimated on purpose. Didn't want to get too far out ahead, but we actually feel like it's much more significant. You froze again for me, Heidi. Sorry.
Okay, I will just bail on the video. All right. So now, Michael, I see you've asked recommendations for the yes, and that's what I'm getting to. So the talking points. So what are we going to ask for? All right, can see my screen. In the handout I'm going to give you, there is a review of the suggested agenda. There is some thank yous, some stuff that's already happened for small business, like $2.5 billion grants for small businesses. That's the big one. But the state's done lots of other things. 2 years of license fee relief for restaurants and bars, and as well as some barbering and cosmetology entrepreneurs. There's been the federal pandemic assistance programs, the loans that were forgiven would not count as state taxable income. So there's been a lot of good things over the past year that have come out for small businesses. What we are going to do this year is support other pieces. Did I spell governor? Why does that look weird to me? In the governor's proposed budget, there is an additional $1.5 billion for 3 additional rounds of small business relief. There is $100 million for iBank loan and guarantee programs. There's $35 million for small business micro grants in underserved communities. Those are mostly, I think, going to be targeted to undocumented entrepreneurs, if I'm not mistaken. There's $100 million in there for cannabis businesses. There's $55 million for farmers, small farmers. And I put the $7 billion in for broadband just because broadband is super crucial for small businesses and as far as being able to access customers in a pandemic, right? So we know that and that's one thing that one of those infrastructure things, all the infrastructure is needed as well. But you want good roads so people can move more goods and stuff around. But I think especially for super small and super micro businesses. There's a lot of Etsy business, eBay businesses, all the restaurants went online. You have to have good broadband everywhere these days in order for small businesses to be able to compete. So I wanted to just put a special call out for that. There's lots of other great stuff, as I mentioned, in the budget. And we are going to give you I'm going to give you a lot of material as far as background. You can read what you want, and I'm mostly just because I have it. You could read what you want, and you cannot read what you want and get as granular as you want. But these are kind of the highlights, I think, for us that I know a lot of your businesses are working with, and that are most kind of targeted. But there's lots of great stuff in the budget. And I'm going to send you a great summary done by Khaled. And that they did a great summary. Michael, I see your question. I do not have any, the data to support the need for grants and loans and loan guarantees. There are many surveys with small businesses, and that I will include for you. And so I can give you some data to support that, what people need. And give you some links for that. All right. So one thing that we're supporting is stuff in the budget. As right now, the budget will get passed on June 15th. It will be passed. Where I was going to say come hell or high water, but it will be passed. I don't think there's any reason why it wouldn't be. I haven't heard any rumblings. So there's a lot of great stuff in there that we want to say, yes, thank you, we support this. There's other stuff that are in it that we'd like to see added to the budget. And so we want to make sure that we advocate for these. Right now, there's $50 million being asked for the Micro Business Relief Fund, which is a street vendor recovery fund. It's kind of like the California Relief Grant, but targeted. Right now, the way I think the ask is, it's targeted for street vendors. It's targeted for micro businesses who weren't able to get access any previous funding. I think the details of this are still being worked out, but it's kind of like the grant program for these very small micro businesses who really are not connected very much to the system at large. There is, and you'll see there's a bill, there's on the next two bullets, there are bills associated with these, but there's also budget asks. So we want $70 million to fund a state CDFI fund, and possibly even an increase in that. I'm not sure where those conversations are, but Sarah, I know you're on the CCCI coalition, which I can never remember what that stands for. I don't know if you know any more on that. The latest is that we're standing at 70 right now.
Yeah, it's California Coalition of Community Investors, CCCI. It's a mouthful. And yeah, right now it's on hold with the dollar amount, also because there's a concern about where it's going to be housed.
But we want this thing right now. We're not going to go into nitty gritties of this. So when you're advocating, you're saying for this is what we want to see happen. Whether even in a regular year, this would be pie in the sky, and we just say but there is a bill, and we'd like to get it funded. And since there's a surplus, we'd like this funds to go toward this. And then there's two pieces, two bills, 1072 and 1573, which are related to the TAPE program, and I'm waiting for the talking points on those, on the amounts. I think I think I saw in my email right before I got this that I have them, so those will be updated. And 1072 is some tweaks, is basically to extend the TAPE program another 4 years with then some other insider ball games, and I'll go through that in a second. And 1573 is to create another program for that's like the TAPE program, but for other organizations that may not be federally recognized, the officially federally recognized entrepreneurial training programs. So we want to ask for budget for that. That funds you all and many of our members. There's also an ask in the Cameo supportive of work. We're definitely supportive of worker co-ops and worker ownership. So there's an ask in for that. So 36.5 for one-time investment in that area. So this is just, oh, Tony has her hand raised. Thank you, Lisa. Okay, wait, I should probably look at chat. So I'm going to stop sharing for a second. Data behind
Julie.
Question from Julie. Data behind the cannabis and 55 million for farmers, is being done for emerging tech? It's not, and I don't go into the details. There's the budget summary that from CalEd goes into the details of it. It's to help local jurisdictions. Cannabis has been, because it's not federally funded, it's been very hard to get resources to that industry, and so I would refer to the CalEd summary that I'm going to send you. Same with the farmers. And then thank you, Michael, for that Fed report. Appreciate that. And I will go to Tony next. Tony, you want to unmute yourself?
Yeah, hi everybody. I just wanted to actually, well, I'll go backwards. One, I would say, Heidi's direction about not getting into the weeds on your ask is so important. The one thing that I would try to emphasize, though, is that the programs have specific dollars for outreach. And then that's a great lead in to explain why it's so important. We're having a real problem at the state level. We're getting dollars, but what we're not getting is dollars to reach the people that you guys all work with. So you don't need to be specific, but if they keep hearing, hey, if you don't have specific outreach dollars and specific ad man, you're not going to reach hard to reach. That would be a great theme. The other,
I will put those in I will update my talking points. That's really good. Yeah.
And then the other three things I just wanted to emphasize that Heidi said, and it's something that I see in doing a lot of meetings, that a lot of time happens because it's not coordinated. Practice introducing yourself so you can do it succinctly and quickly. Also have an agreed upon list of what it is that you want to identify. So one person saying, we think there's 5 issues, and then you can split into groups. And then at the end say, we think there's 5 issues, right? Say what you're going to say, give your examples and go back. People that are in a lot of meetings, if you want them to take good notes, you got to help them. And then the last thing I wanted to emphasize that Heidi talked about, and that is that ask at the end. You have to give a reason for you to follow up. So a simple ask is, who in your district office should I be contacting around microenterprise issues? Or something like that. Any simple little excuse on why you're going to make another phone call, and now you're not doing a cold call, you're doing a follow-up. So those were the 3 things. Intro, give them a list of what you're going to tell them, and then the other being what's going to be the legitimate excuse for you to follow up.
And sort of to that note as well, Tony, is I will be giving you a handout for the legislators, so they'll have a takeaway that's like it's 4 pages. Oh, my dog's gonna bark. Hold on. I will be right back. I apologize. Tony, you want to go? No, I'm just kidding. I'll apologize.
No, look at the dollars that are, there's a lot of different proposals, but this is one where it's really devil's in the details. For instance, we've just recently found out that the 35 million for the seed grants for primarily undocumented workers sounds like a great program. We just learned last week, $0 for admin, $0. And the proposal is to open up the entire SB tape to all nonprofits, as well as the small business financial or small business technical assistance, and to try to take all of the admin to do 3,500 grants out of the overall tape program. No one has raised an issue because we never imagined that could be what was being discussed. So again, this, you don't have to get in the details. It's admin, outreach, or we're not going to hit who we want.
Yep. Thanks. It's a good thing I'm among friends. I appreciate you all giving me a little liberty there. I see one more hand raised, and then I'm going to go on to the bills. So there's lots of good stuff in the budget, and then there are a bunch of bills we're supporting. Frank?
Yes, I was just asking for a little more clarity regarding the worker ownership, that last bullet point.
I will send you the budget. I will send you the budget ask along with I have like a whole stack, lots of documents you can read with it, whichever ones you want more information on to get more familiar with.
Thank you.
Okay. I will. Great. Thank you. All right. So I'm going to go back to sharing my screen again. And this is just, these are some general points of what the recovery funds are for: debt payment relief grants for small businesses, liquidity for CDFIs and mission-based lenders. And I do want to also mention that there is an issue with commercial renters and moratoriums. Everybody is, I think a lot of people are, I don't want to say, should I say freaking out? Maybe freaking out is the right word. I'm sure a lot of actual people and renters are freaking out as what happens in June 30th after evictions, the moratorium on evictions stops. I think freaking out is honest. Yeah, right. Somebody direct message me. I am put in a request that we extend the executive order to extend the authorization for local governments to halt evictions for commercial renters, because it passed the June 30th, so that there can come a solution. There needs to be some kind of solution. There isn't one unless anybody else knows of a good solution. We can update our ask, but I think for right now we should extend the executive order. I do know that it's really super difficult. You have small landlords that are suffering, as well as the small business owners who are renting who are suffering. So it's a really thorny issue in the way and to figure it out. And there was a bill, but I don't think it moved. And I'm gonna call on Tony again and ask her if 1146 moved. I believe that was going to be some kind of property tax credit paid for, but
so it's an urgency measure, and it is still in revenue and tax, but we're working with a number of people to try to get it going. It was never going to move as a bill. It needs at least $1 billion in order to make it worthwhile. So the chair wanted a bill out there to try to raise this issue of what are small businesses going to do once they reopen and they haven't paid landlords. If you got a great landlord, they didn't ask for any money, but it's not a charity. Businesses take, it takes money to maintain businesses. So
So
we are still working on that.
Okay, so I don't know how to put those in the talking points then, so maybe I will update them. And
what I would just do is and I'm happy to work with you. I would just do the statement, we need help for small businesses in paying back rent.
Okay.
And then leave it up to policymakers to figure out what that is.
Yep. Okay. So not 1146. We should not be advocating for 1146. Is that correct?
If you want to, I have a fact sheet. If you want to say, as an example, there's AB 1146. That sounds great, and there's details, and we're happy to follow up with anyone. But I just think it's something that people kind of get once you tell them. But they don't. But it isn't naturally rising to the top of what are some of the things that we need to do.
Yeah. No, it's super. It's like and for the landlords too. And Michael put into into the issue that, like, yeah, if you have evictions, the people who are going to be who own the property are going to end up. Anyway, it's a big mess, and we don't want our small landlords out of business, and we don't want our small businesses on the street. So anyway, so I'm going to actually share the bills that we are supporting. I mentioned before we were looking for 70 million for a state CDFI fund, and that would come the thing that creates the CD. First, you need two pieces of the puzzle. You need the program created, or the the entity created, and you also need it funded. So SB 625, for those of you who don't know, would establish the California Investment and Innovation Program. The way it's written right now, it would say it's administered by the iBank for the purpose of providing grants to qualified CDFIs. It's like the state CDFI program. It's authored by Caballero and Limón, the two senators. We also are requesting meetings with both two. We have secured one with Limón, and I have no doubt we'll secure one with Caballero's staff. But this, a state CDFI fund would be fantastic to provide that liquidity for CDFIs, mission-based lenders. So anything more than that, I would refer you to someone on the CCCI coalition. And there's some negotiations being had, but that's not the purpose of this call. So I'm going to leave that. If you're interested in those, you can talk to someone at CCCI. AB 511 is a Murasuchi bill that would allow California investors to participate in crowdfunding. I have these highlighted on my draft handout because they're going to be right now, as of yesterday, when I put the talking points together, they were on the floor to be voted on by the end of this week. So I think it's today or tomorrow, and the next day is when these things will be voted on. So we'll see where they end up. AB 628. If anybody's been around Cameo for a while and knows our work and trying to get self-employment and included specifically in the workforce, we know, you might know that at the USDOL there was some language in the WIOA authorization, the Workforce Opportunity and something Act, Innovation Act, I think, that passed a few years ago, that explicitly said entrepreneurial training is a valid activity for workforce. And here in AB 628, it is also, what had to happen is, so is that the states and the local workforce boards had to know that it's okay too, so they wouldn't lose their funding. Everybody was worried about losing their funding to the state. This bill specifically calls out entrepreneurial training and support for small business development and microloans and other related activities to support microlending for small businesses in the workforce dollar. This means workforce boards could contract directly with you all to provide entrepreneurial training service, and the workforce boards have a lot of money. So the AB 915 is a bill that would direct state agency directors to establish a minimum goal of 25% procurement. This was an executive order, and it would codify that. It also includes, that would include micro business and require they have a small business liaison to develop an economic equity first action plan. Both AB 628 and AB 915 have passed the Assembly and are headed to the Senate. So that's exciting. They are looking good. If you have any questions, I don't know who the point person would be on AB 628, but you could call. I will give you a fact sheet for that. And AB 915, our friends at the ethnic chambers, Cal Chamber, Cal African American Chamber of Commerce, and Cal Asian Chamber, and Julian Canetti's Cal Hispanic Chamber of Commerce are sponsors of the bill. So you can ask. They're the ones who are working most heavily at that, but we are for sure supporting that. I did mention 1072 and 1573. I'll take those in tandem just because they're kind of the same. They're not the same, but they're super related. As I mentioned, 1072 will extend tape to, it's now been amended to January 1, 2026, and as well as do some other back end pieces and rearrange things. And 1573, as Tony mentioned while I was gone, will create the small business retention program that would give money, if there's funds for it, give money to other nonprofits that are mission driven, that provide free low cost services to underserved businesses, and so other nonprofits that work that might not be eligible to apply for TAPE money. So those two are really exciting. Those are going to be voted on. They're going to be voted on this week. They have still not passed yet. They're on the floor, so we look forward to, fingers crossed, hopefully those passing. And then AB 1106 is a would be a employment training program to meet the needs of small businesses, and that is a Jetty committee bill. And Tony would be the one to ask if you have more questions about that, and if anybody needs to connect with them. So those are the pieces that we're advocating for. So there's lots of budget pieces, there's the bill pieces. When you go and you do your meetings, you don't have to talk about them all. Maybe pick a couple. I would say the budget is super important. Pick one, 2 or 3 or 4 and say, hey, these are the pieces that really resonate with you and that we really want to pass it. And then you can kind of hand them the handout and say, hey, there's other pieces of legislation that we are supporting and we hope we can have your support as well. And then there are just, these talking points. California micro businesses critical for equitable recovery. We kind of talked about this at the beginning. These are some of the high level messaging you can use in your introduction. Very small businesses are critical to our economic recovery. Cameo members are wealth creators and provide critical support. That's where Tony was saying about the outreach. And then business assistance is a key to success, and capital access is important. So all these pieces together create a strong network and a strong ecosystem that are going to help these businesses get through the recovery. So with that, I've stopped sharing my screen. I know I've talked a lot. I'm happy to stay on for any questions. We are at time. I will make sure you guys get all the background materials that you need. I am going to take a moment to update the handout, but we'll get that to you as well. Probably all by tomorrow morning. So stay tuned. You don't have to memorize. You only have to memorize like 1 or 2 things. But with that, and I will. I'll take questions. I'll stay on in case anybody has any questions. But with that, we can close the prep session. Hope that was helpful. Great. And sorry about the internet.